Hey guys, it's me. And today, we'll be looking at some facts about World War II that sound fake, but are true. Make sure to leave a like rating on this video, and we'll go ahead and get started. The Polish Death List. Death lists, or Einsatzgruppen, were mobile killing squads of the SS that carried out the systematic murder of Jews, Roma, gay men, people with disabilities, and others deemed undesirable by Nazi Germany during World War II. The most infamous of these death lists operated in German-occupied Poland, where entire villages could be wiped out in a single day. In total, the Einsatzgruppen are believed to have murdered more than 2 million people in the Soviet Union and Poland. German U-boats almost sank the Sydney Harbor Bridge. During the Battle of the Atlantic, German U-boats would occasionally sail into relatively shallow waters off the coast of New South Wales, Australia, and lay mines in the path of Allied shipping. On June 1942, one of these U-boats, the U-67, entered Sydney Harbor, laying 14 naval mines along the route shipping would take into the port. One of these mines washed up on the shore of Sydney Harbor, hidden under some rocks. It was found on November 1942, only a month after it was laid. The mine was then taken out into the harbor where it was blown up by a naval vessel. Fortunately, the mine explosion did not damage the bridge itself, but it did cause massive disruptions to the shipping coming into and out of the harbor. This was the closest call for the Sydney Harbor Bridge during the war. American soldiers freed from Japanese captivity in 1945. While there is no denying the brutality of the Japanese army, it should be noted that they generally treated their American prisoners better than their own citizens. Americans held in Japan were often given better food than the average Japanese person, and were forced to work less than their Japanese counterparts. The Americans captured in the fall of 1944 were given warm clothing so that they would not freeze during the winter months. Whereas Japanese soldiers froze to death on the battlefields. When the war ended and the Americans returned home, many of them said that they couldn't wait to eat American food again. Despite having been malnourished during their time in Japanese captivity, Hitler's father shot Mussolini's father. In 1916, Adolf Hitler's father, Alois, was shot in the stomach by a local Italian man named Alessandro Mussolini, who was the father of future Italian dictator Benito Mussolini. The incident took place in northern Italy, where both men were living at the time. Both men had gotten into an argument, but the exact nature of the argument is unknown. Alessandro approached Adolf's father, who was sitting on a bench outside, and shot him in the stomach. Hitler Sr. was able to survive the assassination attempt, but died from complications related to the wound in 1917. While he was recovering from the shooting, he blamed the incident on the Austrians, saying that they had hired someone to kill him because he had previously criticized the Habsburg monarchy. This was almost certainly untrue. What makes the story even stranger is that exactly 20 years later, Hitler himself would order the assassination of Mussolini. Allied planes dropped propaganda leaflets over Germany. During the final year of World War II, the British Royal Air Force undertook an unusual mission, dropping 2 million propaganda leaflets over Germany in an effort to persuade the German people to rise up against Hitler. These leaflets were designed to make the German people aware of the atrocities committed by the Nazis and to convince them that the war was lost. They also included instructions on how to turn in Nazi officials to the Allies once they arrived in Germany. A lot of these leaflets were written by former Nazis who had since switched sides and were calling for a revolution within Germany. Strangely enough, in response to this leaflet campaign, Hitler ordered the production of his own propaganda leaflets to be dropped over Britain. These leaflets claimed that Germany would soon invade Britain and warned the British people to prepare for occupation. Hitler also said that the German army would avenge Britain's airmen who were conducting the leaflet drops. During World War II, Canadians served on every front of the war, fighting against the Germans, Italians, and Japanese. The Royal Canadian Air Force alone trained 75,000 pilots during the war, with thousands more serving in support roles. Despite being a relatively small country with a relatively small population, Canada played a major role in the Allied victory, 48,000 Canadians giving their lives during the war. At the start of World War II, French Guiana was largely unoccupied. This made it an ideal location for the British to set up a base from which they could attack the Germans. The British invaded and quickly occupied the territory, forcing the French governor to flee. This event marked the beginning of the Anglo-French rivalry during the war. As the British would hold the territory until it was returned to France in 1945, a team of female parachute riggers helped Allied troops capture several key bridges behind enemy lines. The women would parachute into small villages late at night and attach explosive charges to bridges. They would then slip back into the shadows and escape before the explosions went off. While this tactic proved effective, it also put the women in great danger. Many of them were caught and executed by the Germans. Those who managed to escape often suffered severe injuries from their explosions. Still, the tactic remained popular throughout the war, and hundreds of bridges were destroyed by female commandos. British soldiers once accidentally attacked and fought against each other during the Battle of Arnhem. The incident took place on September 17, 1944, when a group of paratroopers came under fire from an unexpected source. Unable to identify the shooters in the dark, the British soldiers opened fire on what turned out to be friendly troops. The confusion led to several casualties and only stopped when someone yelled, "Hold your fire, you're shooting at our own." Once the mistake was realized, the soldiers quickly switched to treating the wounded. Female snipers were extremely effective during World War II. One Russian sniper, Ludmila Pavlichenko, is said to have killed 309 German soldiers during the war. Another female sniper from Finland, Fredrika Amanda, shot down 6 enemy aircraft and 5 artillery positions. Even though there were far fewer female snipers than male snipers, they still accounted for a significant number of enemy kills during the war. Soviet forces famously stormed the beaches of Normandy just hours after D-Day. However, it's important to remember that the Soviets weren't actually fighting alongside the British and Americans. At the time, the Soviet Union was still fighting against the Germans on the Eastern Front. For the Soviets, D-Day was simply another day of fighting the Germans. Only after the Allies had established a foothold in France did the Soviets begin their own invasion of Western Europe. While World War II is often thought of as a conflict between good and evil, the reality was much more complex. For example, during the war, the British once mistakenly bombed and killed more of their own soldiers than Germans. This incident took place in March 1944, when a group of British bombers mistakenly attacked and destroyed their own supply dump in Belgium, killing 428 British soldiers and wounding 631 others. Although Russia was a major player during World War II, there were no Russian-speaking countries involved in the war. At the time, Russia was part of the Soviet Union, which was a multinational state that included Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and many other republics. While some of these nations might not have wanted to fight alongside the Russians, none of them wanted to fight against them either. And as always, don't forget to subscribe for updates. I'll see you next time.